The man had learned to move through life quietly. Not because he wanted to be invisible, but because being loud took energy he no longer had. Every day followed the same simple pattern. Wake up before sunrise. Make breakfast for his daughter. Walk her to the neighbor's house so she could be watched while he went to work. Then work long hours, doing whatever job paid enough to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. By the time night came, his body was tired. But his mind was always more tired than his hands. Being a single father had changed him. Before, he had dreams that stretched far into the future. Now, his dreams were short and practical. Get through this week. Pay the bills. Make sure his daughter felt safe. Make sure she laughed at least once a day. That was enough. That evening started like any other. He left work later than usual, his shoulders tight from lifting heavy boxes all day. His phone buzzed with a message from the neighbor saying his daughter had already fallen asleep. That brought him a small sense of relief. At least he wouldn't have to wake her when he got home. The road was quiet as he drove. Streetlights passed one by one, lighting the inside of his old car for a second before fading again. He was halfway home when he noticed something unusual near a gas station up ahead. A police car sat parked at an odd angle, not properly pulled into a space. Its lights were off. No flashing. No movement. He slowed down without really thinking about it. His first instinct was to keep driving. Police had always made him uncomfortable. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because they reminded him of the worst night of his life. A night he tried not to think about, but as he got closer, he saw someone sitting on the curb near the police car. A woman. She was wearing a police uniform. Her head was lowered, and one hand was pressed against her arm. Even from a distance, something about the way she sat felt wrong. This was not someone taking a break. He passed the gas station entrance, then slowed almost to a stop. His mind argued with itself. Someone else will help. It's not your problem. You're tired. You need to get home. Then he imagined his daughter, years from now, asking him what kind of person he was. That thought made his chest feel tight. He turned the car around. He parked a few feet away and stepped out carefully. The night air was cool, and the smell of fuel hung lightly in the air. As he got closer, he made sure his hands were visible. He didn't want to startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. The officer looked up slowly. Her face was pale, and there was a small cut above her eyebrow. Her eyes were alert but tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. "I'm fine," she said quickly, like it was a habit. Then she paused. "Actually, I could use a minute." He nodded and stopped a few steps away. "Do you need medical help? I can call someone." She shook her head. "Backup is on the way. My radio's working. I just misjudged a situation." Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she moved it away from her arm. He noticed a dark stain on her sleeve. "Blood. May I?" he asked, pointing gently. She hesitated, then nodded. He tore a clean piece of cloth from a spare shirt he kept in the car for work and offered it to her. She pressed it against the wound with a small wince. "Thank you," she said. They sat in silence for a moment. The gas station lights hummed softly above them. A car passed on the road, but otherwise the world felt still. "You don't have to stay," she said, not looking at him. "I don't want to put you in an awkward position." "I'll wait," he replied. "You shouldn't be alone right now." She glanced at him, studying his face. "You don't seem scared." He gave a small smile. "I am. Just used to pushing through it." That made her exhale slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for longer than she realized. Minutes passed. He noticed details he hadn't at first. The dirt on her uniform. A scrape on her knee. The way she kept scanning the area, even while hurt. This was someone who didn't fully relax, even when sitting on the ground. "Long day." She asked, "Long life?" He answered before he could stop himself. Then he shrugged. "But yeah. Long day too." She gave a quiet laugh. It didn't last long, but it was real. "You married?" she asked gently. Not out of curiosity, but conversation. He shook his head. "Widowed. One kid." Her expression changed slightly. Not pity. Something closer to respect. That's not easy. No, he said, but she's worth everything. He didn't know why he was talking so openly. Maybe it was because this woman was a stranger. Maybe it was because nights like this made people honest. The sound of distant sirens grew louder. She noticed it too, and relaxed just a bit. They're close, she said. Good. She looked at him again, more carefully this time. Her eyes lingered on his face, as if searching her memory. Her brow furrowed slightly. Have we met before? She asked. The question caught him off guard. He studied her face. There was something about her eyes that stirred a strange feeling in his chest. Not recognition exactly. More like a memory knocking on a door he kept locked. I don't think so, he said slowly. I would remember, she nodded, but didn't look fully convinced. You just seem familiar. He shrugged. I get that sometimes. The backup cars arrived moments later, lights flashing now, filling the gas station with red and blue. 2 officers rushed over, concern clear on their faces. She's stable, one of them said after checking her. We'll get her to the hospital. Before standing, she looked at the man again. Thank you. Most people would have driven past. He shook his head. I hope someone would stop if it were me. She hesitated, then said quietly, what you did mattered. He watched as they helped her up and guided her toward another car. As the doors closed and the vehicles pulled away, the gas station felt empty again. He stood there for a moment longer, his heart beating faster than usual. Something about the encounter stayed with him. Not the danger. Not the blood. It was the feeling he couldn't explain. The sense that this was not just a random moment. When he finally got back into his car, his hands rested on the steering wheel, unmoving. He saw her face again in his mind. Backed her eyes. The way she looked at him like she was trying to remember something important. As he drove home, he told himself to forget it. Life didn't allow room for mysteries. He had responsibilities. A child waiting for him in a quiet house. But deep down, he knew this night would not fade easily. Some moments were small only on the surface. Others changed the direction of things in ways no one could see at the time. And this, he felt, was one of those moments. The days after that night moved on, but something inside him did not. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Wake up early. Pack a small lunch. Tie his daughter's shoes while she told him stories that didn't always make sense. Walk her next door. Go to work. Come home tired. Sit beside her bed until she fell asleep. On the outside, nothing had changed. On the inside, his thoughts kept drifting back to the gas station. He told himself it was nothing. People helped each other every day. Sometimes strangers crossed paths and never met again. That was how life worked. Still, when he lay in bed at night, he saw her face in his mind. Not the blood or the injury, but the way she looked at him. As if she was trying to remember something important and failing. He wondered if she was okay. If her arm had healed. If she had gone back to work already. He even caught himself glancing at police cars on the road more often than before, without realizing why. At work, his focus slipped. He made small mistakes, nothing serious, but enough that his supervisor noticed. You all right? The supervisor asked one afternoon. You seem distracted. I'm fine, he said automatically. Then he paused. Just tired. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. One evening, while helping his daughter with her homework, she looked up at him suddenly. Why do you look sad? She asked. The question surprised him. He thought he had gotten good at hiding his feelings. I don't feel sad, he said gently. She studied him the way children do, with honesty adults forget. You look like you're thinking about something that hurts, he swallowed. Sometimes grown-ups think too much. She nodded like that answer made sense. Then she smiled and went back to her paper. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. He picked up his phone, then put it down again. He didn't even know what he would search for. Meanwhile, across town, the female officer sat alone in her apartment, her arm wrapped and resting against her side. She had been cleared to go home, but not back to full duty yet. The doctor told her to rest. She tried, but rest did not come easily. Her mind kept replaying the same moment. Sitting on the curb, the smell of fuel, the sound of his voice asking if she was okay. She had met hundreds of people in her job. Faces blurred together over time, but his did not blur. It stayed clear, sharp, unsettling. She knew why. She stood up and walked to a small box tucked away on a shelf. Inside were old papers she rarely touched, reports from years ago. Cases that stayed with her for reasons she couldn't fully explain. She pulled one folder out and sat back down. The memory came back slowly, like a door opening. Years ago, she was new to the force, nervous, trying to prove herself. That night had been her first experience with real loss. Not paperwork loss, not training loss, real loss. She remembered the house, the flashing lights, the silence that felt louder than noise, and she remembered him. A man standing in the doorway, holding a tiny baby against his chest, his face empty, like someone had taken something from inside him and left nothing behind. She remembered wanting to say something helpful and realizing there were no words that could fix what had happened. She had never forgotten that night. She thought he had forgotten her until the gas station. She hadn't been sure at first. Years had passed. Faces changed. Pain aged people in quiet ways. But the more she thought about it, the more certain she became. It was him. The same man who had stood in shock years ago was now the one kneeling beside her, calm/steady, offering help without hesitation. The realization made her chest feel tight. She wondered if he recognized her too, if he remembered that night, or if she was just another uniform to him. Part of her hoped he didn't remember. Another part felt like he deserved to know. The next few days she found herself asking small questions at work. Nothing official. Just enough to confirm what she already suspected. A name. A past address. A date. Her suspicion turned into certainty. It was him and the child he had been holding that. Night was now a school-aged girl. The knowledge weighed on her. She wasn't sure what to do with it. Reaching out felt risky. Staying silent felt wrong. Back at home, the single father tried to push the memory away, but small things kept pulling it back. A police siren in the distance. A news story on television. A dream where he stood at a gas station, unable to move. One afternoon, while waiting to pick up his daughter, he noticed a police car parked down the street. His stomach tightened for no clear reason. The officer inside stayed in the car. No interaction. No reason for concern. Still, the feeling stayed with him. That night, he finally admitted something to himself. The reason that night stayed with him wasn't because he helped someone. It was because being near her reopened a part of his past he had sealed shut. A part he told himself he didn't need anymore. He remembered how the police had come to his door years ago. How time seemed to stop. How the world became quiet and unreal. He had learned to live with that memory by pushing it far away. By focusing only on the present. By not asking questions. Seeing her had shaken that balance. A few days later, as he left work early to pick up his daughter, his phone rang from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Hi, a woman's voice said. I hope I'm not bothering you. He knew the voice instantly. His grip tightened on the phone. This is the officer you helped the other night, she continued. I just wanted to say thank you again. In person, if possible. His first instinct was to say no. To protect the quiet life he had built. That's not necessary, he said carefully. I understand, she replied. I won't take much of your time. There's just something important I think you should know. Silence stretched between them. What kind of something? He asked. Something from the past, she said gently. His chest tightened. You have the wrong person. I don't think I do, she said. Not accusing, just certain. He closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the locked door in his mind. Where? He asked quietly. A public place, she said. Your choice. They agreed on a small cafe near a park. Neutral. Open. Safe. After the call ended. He sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. He didn't know why he agreed. He only knew that saying no would not have brought peace. That evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, she wrapped her arms around his neck. Are you leaving again? She asked sleepily. No, he said softly. I'll always come back. As he turned off the light, he stood in the doorway longer than usual. He felt like he was standing on the edge of something he didn't fully understand. Some meetings changed nothing. Others changed everything, and deep down, he sensed this one would not be small. The day of their meeting came slowly, as if the world was deliberately stretching time. The single father woke early, trying to act normal, but every step felt heavy with anticipation. He prepared for work, helped his daughter with breakfast, and walked her next door, but his mind was elsewhere. Every thought circled back to the cafe, to the moment when he would finally see her again. The woman who had stirred memories he thought he had buried long ago. He arrived early, parking a few blocks away. The cafe was small and quiet, with a few tables scattered near the windows. The kind of place where people came to read or sip coffee in silence. He chose a table where he could see the entrance without being obvious, his hands resting on the cool surface of the table, fingers drumming lightly. She arrived shortly after, walking briskly, but not hurriedly. Her uniform was replaced by plain clothes, casual but tidy. She spotted him immediately and hesitated for a moment, as if gauging his reaction. When she finally approached, there was no tension. Only a quiet acknowledgement of the shared history that had suddenly brought them together. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she said softly. Of course, he replied. His voice was steady, though his chest felt tight. They sat across from each other, and for a moment neither spoke. Outside, the city moved on without them, unaware of the conversation about to unfold. I wanted to tell you, she began. Why, I remembered you so clearly that night at the gas station, and why I think it's important you know who I am. He leaned back, arms resting on the table, his mind bracing itself. You were holding your daughter that night, she continued, the night your wife passed away. Her voice softened. I was the officer on that scene. I remember you standing there, frozen, with the baby in your arms. I'll never forget it. It was one of the first times I faced a tragedy like that, and it affected me deeply. He felt a jolt in his chest, a mixture of surprise and something heavier he couldn't name. He had never expected her to know. He had never imagined that the police officer from the gas station had once witnessed the worst night of his life. I didn't know, he said slowly, struggling to keep his voice calm. I thought that was just another memory for everyone else. I didn't know anyone remembered. She nodded. Did. I remembered you then, and I remembered you now. When I saw you at the gas station, it felt impossible at first. But then I knew. It had to be you. He took a deep breath, trying to absorb her words. Memories he had kept locked away for years pressed against the walls he had built around them. The night of his wife's death, the emptiness, the shock, the way he had held his newborn daughter and felt utterly powerless. All of it came rushing back. I didn't mean to get involved, he said finally. I saw someone hurt and I acted. I didn't think it mattered beyond that. She shook her head. It mattered more than you realize. That night, seeing you there, it changed how I looked at my job. I wanted to do better. I wanted to make sure that I could help people, really help them when they needed it most. You gave me a reminder of why this job matters. Silence fell again, comfortable this time. They were no longer strangers. They were two people connected by tragedy, by chance, and by small acts of human kindness. Do you ever think about it? She asked quietly. The night we met at your house? He nodded. Every day. Some nights more than others, it's hard not to. I know, she said. I think about it too. More than I should, probably. The conversation shifted naturally, moving from memories to the present. She asked about his daughter, curious about her life in school. He spoke with pride, a warmth that softened the weight in his chest. He told her about small victories, first steps, first words, and the little habits that made his daughter unique. She listened, genuinely interested, asking questions that revealed a careful, compassionate nature beneath her professional exterior. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The initial tension had dissolved, replaced by a quiet understanding. They were two people who had seen life at its rawest and survived. Somehow finding each other again. "I owe you a lot," he said finally, almost without realizing it. "Not just for helping me, but for reminding me that people can care even when everything feels broken." "Reminded me too," she replied. "That kindness still exists. That we're capable of doing the right thing even when it's hard." Outside, the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the cafe. Neither of them wanted to leave just yet. There was more to say, more to understand, but for the first time, the weight of the past felt lighter. "You should get home," she said finally. "Your daughter will be waiting." He nodded, standing slowly. They exchanged a look that held unspoken words: trust, respect, and something else. Something softer, tentative but real. As he walked back to his car, he felt a strange sense of peace. Not closure, not yet, but a start. A bridge had been built between the past and the present, fragile but strong enough to support the weight of what came next. For her part, she returned to her apartment that evening, her mind still buzzing. The meeting had given her clarity, but also a sense of purpose. She knew that their paths were not finished crossing. Some connections were too significant to end after a single encounter. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Memories still lingered, sharp and bittersweet. But instead of fear or sorrow, there was a sense of possibility. Life had thrown them together again for a reason, and though neither could see the full picture yet, they both felt it. The past had its scars, but it also had lessons. The small acts of courage, the quiet moments of care, and the decision to act when it mattered most, they were all part of a story that was still being written, and for the first time in a long time. He allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't just about survival. A future where he could trust, where he could let people in, and maybe, just maybe, where he could find a sense of belonging again. The days after their meeting felt lighter, though not without weight. The single father went through his routine, but now the memory of the cafe lingered like a warm shadow. It was strange how one encounter could make the ordinary world seem different, as if colors were sharper and sounds more meaningful. He found himself smiling at small things, like his daughter's laughter echoing down the hall, or the way she carefully lined up her crayons on the table. Even the mundane errands held a new significance. Still, there were moments when the past returned uninvited. Nights when sleep came slowly, and his mind replayed the night his wife had died. The helplessness he had felt holding a newborn while the world collapsed around him. Seeing the officer again had reopened doors he had locked for years, and he wasn't sure whether to be grateful or fearful. Memories are not always gentle. One afternoon, while waiting for his daughter to finish school, he noticed a familiar figure walking briskly down the street. She hadn't called this time. He hadn't expected her to appear. Yet here she was, moving with purpose but cautious, as if unsure how he would react. When she saw him, she gave a small nod, almost apologetic for showing up unannounced. He felt a mixture of relief and unease. They walked together to a nearby park, the air fresh with the scent of early spring. He noticed the careful way she stepped over cracks in the pavement, as if even the smallest things mattered. They sat on a bench near the playground, watching children run and shout, free of the weight adults carry. "You came without calling," he said, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I wanted to see you," she replied simply. Her voice carried the same calm certainty he remembered from that first night. "And I wanted to say more, face to face." He nodded. "I think I need to hear it." She looked at him, her eyes searching for the right words. "That night, when I was hurt at the gas station, I realized how small our acts of kindness can be. You didn't think twice. You didn't hesitate. You helped me without expecting anything. It reminded me of the difference we can make when we choose to care. And it made me think of the night at your house years ago. You didn't ask for help then. but I remember thinking that someone should. That maybe someone could have made it a little easier for you. I couldn't, but now I can make a choice to help, even if it's just by being honest with you." His chest tightened. It was rare for someone to speak so openly, so clearly, about feelings without sugarcoating. Most people avoided truth, hiding behind polite words. She did not. She met him with raw honesty, and it unsettled him in the best way. "I appreciate that," he said slowly. "You don't have to explain yourself. Just being here is enough." They sat in silence, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. Children's laughter rang from the playground, and for a moment the world felt simple, almost easy. It was a fleeting moment, but one they both clung to. After a while, she shifted, leaning slightly forward. "I need to ask something. Will you forgive me for that night?" He blinked. "Forgive you? You didn't do anything wrong." "I did," she said quietly. "I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't save her. Your wife. I was there. I couldn't fix it. I've carried that guilt for years." He took a deep breath. "I don't need to carry that for you. You did what you could. That's all anyone could do." She nodded, tears welling but controlled. "It doesn't feel like enough." "It is enough," he said firmly. "It really is. Holding on to blame won't bring her back. It won't help either of us. We have to live, to keep going, and not let regret control our lives." The wind shifted, brushing their faces with cool air. It felt like a quiet approval from the world, gentle and unobtrusive. They spent hours talking after that. Not just about the past, but about small joys, worries, and daily life. He shared stories about his daughter, the funny things she did, the questions she asked about the world. She laughed genuinely at his anecdotes. And he found himself smiling more than he had in years as the sun began to set. Casting warm gold across the park, they stood to leave. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I don't want this to be the last time we talk." He nodded. "It won't be. I feel like we've only just started understanding each other." Her eyes softened. "Good. That's all I wanted to hear." When he returned home, his daughter ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "Did you have fun?" she asked, sensing the unusual calm and lightness in his expression. "Yes," he said, lifting her into his arms. "I had a very good day." That night, as he lay in bed, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of possibility. Life had been heavy, full of responsibilities and grief, but now there was room for connection, for trust, for healing. He thought about the officer and the honesty they had shared, and he realized that maybe, just maybe, they could help each other carry the weight of their pasts. Meanwhile, she returned home feeling lighter too. The burden she had carried for years had been acknowledged, shared, and met with compassion rather than blame. She realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about facing it together with someone who understood. Days turned into weeks, and small routines began to change. He found himself looking forward to seeing her, exchanging messages, and sometimes sharing a cup of coffee or a quiet conversation. Their connection was slow, deliberate, and careful, but it was real. He noticed a shift in himself. The weight he carried every day seemed a little easier to bear. He smiled more, laughed more, and even found small moments of patience with his daughter that had previously felt impossible. She noticed too and would comment on how happy he seemed, unaware of the new connection that was quietly transforming his world. For her, the change was equally profound. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder of why she had chosen this career, and a comfort in knowing that even in a world full of tragedy, acts of kindness and honesty could create real change. One afternoon, they met again at the same cafe. No pressure, no urgency, just two people sharing time and thoughts. They talked about books, music, and the small absurdities of life. They laughed together, sometimes at nothing at all, enjoying the simple act of being present. And with every conversation, the gap between past and present seemed to shrink. It was in these quiet moments that they both realized something important. Life didn't have to be defined by pain or guilt. There was room for joy, connection, and understanding, even when the past had been harsh and unforgiving. They were no longer defined solely by tragedy, but by the courage to face it and move forward together, and though neither could see the full path ahead, both felt it clearly in their hearts. Whatever came next, they would face it with honesty, trust, and a willingness to heal. The future, once heavy and uncertain, now held the promise of something better. Something real and something worth holding on to. The weeks that followed were full of quiet changes. The single father found himself waking up earlier, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. There was a sense of anticipation that he had not felt in years, subtle and steady. Like the first light of dawn filtering into a room that had been dark for too long. Even the small tasks of daily life, the breakfast, the walks, the chores felt slightly lighter. Infused with a sense of purpose and connection he hadn't realized he was missing. His daughter noticed the difference immediately. She would watch him from across the room as he prepared meals, noting the calm in his movements, the smiles that came naturally to his face. One morning, she tugged at his sleeve while he was cooking pancakes. "You look happy?" "Dad, really happy," she said, tilting her head. He chuckled, flipping a pancake carefully. "I am, sweetheart. I really am." The truth was, he had never expected to feel this way again. Life had taught him that happiness could be fragile, fleeting, and often just out of reach. But something about the past few weeks, the connection with the officer, had opened a space inside him where joy could grow. He realized that letting himself care again didn't mean forgetting the past. It meant honoring it by living fully in the present. The officer, too, experienced subtle shifts. Her days at work were busy, filled with calls and paperwork, but she approached them with a renewed sense of purpose. She smiled more easily at colleagues, found patience where she once had none, and allowed herself small moments of rest and reflection without guilt. The meetings with the single father had reminded her that even in a profession marked by tragedy, humanity could thrive. She didn't just survive. She learned to carry hope with her. They continued to meet, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at the park, and sometimes just walking through the quiet streets of the town. Each encounter was simple, unhurried, and honest. They shared stories, laughter, and small worries. Sometimes they spoke about the past, always carefully, always gently. And sometimes they spoke about the future, letting themselves imagine possibilities they had not dared to consider before. One evening, as the sky darkened into shades of purple and gold, they found themselves sitting on a bench overlooking the river. The water reflected the fading light, rippling gently with each movement. He watched her watch the river, her expression thoughtful and calm. "Do you ever think about how life brings people together?" she asked quietly. He nodded, taking a moment before answering. "All the time. I used to think meetings like ours were accidents, random moments with no meaning. But now, I'm not so sure. Sometimes it feels like things happen to lead us to the people we need, even if we don't understand why." She smiled softly. "I feel the same way. You've reminded me that small acts of courage can have ripple effects, and that we're never truly alone, even when it feels like it." He glanced at her, noticing the softness in her eyes, the calm strength she carried without effort. He realized that the past, the tragedies, and the grief had shaped them both, but it had also prepared them to meet each other in this exact way. "At this exact time, do you think we can keep moving forward?" he asked, voice low and careful. "I think we have to," she replied. "For ourselves, for the people we care about, and for the lives we're trying to live. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to face each day with courage and honesty." They stayed there for a while, watching the river, listening to the gentle sound of water and distant laughter from a nearby playground. The moment was quiet, but full of meaning. A small anchor in a world that often felt chaotic and heavy. Days later, the single father found himself opening up more at work and at home. His interactions with his daughter became more patient and joyful. He discovered the pleasure in small victories, like helping her with a difficult homework problem or watching her learn a new skill. Each day, he felt a little more like himself, a little freer to be both a parent and a man who could care and trust without fear. The officer, too, began to embrace the subtle power of their connection. She shared small glimpses of her life outside work, revealing hobbies and thoughts she had kept private. They discussed books, movies, and even quiet moments of fear or doubt. In these conversations, they found a rhythm, a balance between honesty and comfort that made their bond feel natural and resilient. One rainy afternoon, they met at the cafe, the patter of rain against the windows providing a soft, calming background. They talked about the unpredictability of life and how the smallest gestures could change everything. He recounted moments from his daughter's life, the little things that brought her joy, and she shared experiences from her work that reminded her why she chose to help others. Even when it was difficult, I never realized how much a single act of kindness could matter, she said, stirring her coffee slowly. Seeing you help me even when you were tired and uncertain, it changed the way I view everything. It gave me hope. He reached across the table, placing his hand lightly over hers. And you reminded me that there's more to life than surviving, that we can live fully even with the past in our hearts. The conversation stretched on, filled with laughter, quiet moments of reflection, and gentle silences. They didn't rush, didn't force words, and didn't need to. The presence itself was enough, a reassurance that connection could exist without pressure or expectation. As the months went by, their lives intertwined naturally. They met more frequently, sometimes in public, sometimes in quiet corners of the town, sharing meals, walks, and conversation. They celebrated small joys together, like a daughter's school performance or a rare day off without obligations. The past remained, but it no longer dictated the present. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, the city lights reflecting on the water, he realized something profound. The connection they shared had grown into something beyond simple friendship. It was built on honesty, shared experience, and a mutual understanding of pain and hope. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic love story, but a slow, steady realization that some bonds are meant to be nurtured and cherished. I never thought I could feel this way again, he admitted quietly. Me neither, she replied, her hand brushing lightly against his. But here we are, and maybe that's the point, that we find each other not by chance, but by choice. He nodded, feeling a sense of peace he had not known in years. The past, with its grief and loss, had shaped them, but it had also prepared them for this moment. The tragedy that once seemed unbearable had given them the capacity to understand, to empathize, and to care in ways they might never have experienced otherwise. The future remained uncertain, as it always does. But for the first time in a long while, he welcomed that uncertainty. It wasn't frightening. It was an invitation, a chance to build something meaningful, to live with intention and to embrace connection without fear. They walked in silence for a while, simply enjoying the rhythm of their steps and the quiet of the evening. Sometimes words were unnecessary. Presence, trust, and shared experience spoke more loudly than any conversation could. When they finally parted that night, there was no need for promises or declarations. Their bond had already been affirmed in countless small ways through honesty, kindness, and the courage to face life with open hearts. As he returned home, carrying the quiet joy of the day, he felt the weight of the past settle gently, no longer oppressive. But part of the story that had led him here. He tucked his daughter into bed, kissed her forehead, and watched her drift into sleep, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the life he had, the love he could give, and the connection that had quietly transformed everything. The officer, walking back to her apartment under a sky now dotted with stars, carried a similar sense of peace. The world was unpredictable, and tragedy remained a part of it. But the knowledge that human kindness and courage could create real, lasting change gave her strength, and in that quiet, shared understanding, both of them realized something simple, yet profound. Life was not about escaping the past or avoiding pain, but about finding the courage to embrace connection, to trust again, and to create moments of hope and joy wherever possible. They had discovered that together, and it was a discovery worth carrying forward no matter what came next.